Hello. So let me restart this. This is a stream all about ROM hacking for the Nintendo Entertainment System / Famicom. This is one of my hobbies. And, you know, for people of my generation, I'm in my early 40s. I'm 41 years old. The Nintendo Entertainment System / Famicom, family computer, came out in 1983 in Japan and 1985 in the US, and was just a huge part of my childhood. I'd played video games before that. I had a Mattel Intellivision and an Apple IIe. But the Nintendo Entertainment System really defined what video games were for people of my generation. And one of my hobbies is working with Nintendo Entertainment System video games and doing ROM hacking of them. And I'm going to be talking now live. I'm going to be doing a live demonstration of ROM hacking for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And hopefully that'll be fun for you, and it should give you a little bit of info about how exactly this is done. Let's plug in our controller. One of the gravestones leads to a trip. This is the Addams Family. It's a game by Ocean, which is, it's an inferior version. I've never played this game. It's an inferior version of a game which came out on many platforms. I believe Super NES and Genesis mainly. And you are Gomez, and it's a little Super Mario type platformer where you're going around trying to save your family members. There is a reason why I'm starting with this game, and I'm going to pause it for a second. There is some unused data in this game ROM. Those are images of Pugsley, Wednesday, Grandmama, and Morticia, and you don't actually see their bodies in the inventory in the game, and you don't see Morticia at all. And there are also some portraits of the family that are in the graphics that you don't actually see in the game. But I'm going to look at the graphics for this video game. So this stream is going to be teaching you all about how to hack a Nintendo Entertainment System video game. So that's, yeah. Are we actually on? Because I'm getting sort of a... Are we actually on? That's a question. We are... Okay. So wait, we weren't live before? I'm getting the feeling we weren't actually live before because I hadn't clicked on this thing. Or maybe we were and maybe we weren't. I don't know. I'm not getting it on my phone. Anyway, today's stream is going to be all about ROM hacking for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And, you know, sorry for looking at my studio. I'm just making sure that we're actually on, you know. Yeah, getting confused. So, this is a program called YY-CHR.net, and it's designed for viewing the graphics of a video game, ROM. Nintendo especially. The NES is especially good for ROM hacking because it's relatively simple. The games for it are still pretty popular, and there are tons of great tools for hacking a Nintendo game. So, yeah, hopefully I am online. Like, I'm just concerned because my phone is being weird, I guess. Like, I'm not actually getting a picture on my phone. So I'm not 100% sure if I'm streaming or not. I feel like a fool. Am I streaming or what? I am streaming, right? This is what's happening. If you're in the chat, please let me know, because my it says. I'm very confused. So if this comes up, do I get a picture? I don't get a picture on my phone. I'm very confused. So, anyway, I'm just going to assume I'm live, even though my phone is being weird about it. So today's stream is all about ROM hacking for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And the NES is especially good for ROM hacking because it's relatively simple. You're dealing with 4 colors and fairly simple sprites. It's relatively easy to understand, and there are many great tools for doing it. And like anything to do with games and programming, ROM hacking is just more difficult under the hood than you'd imagine. But there are things about it that are simple and are easy enough to understand. So we're going to be focusing on how to get into it and how to kind of do the work. Why is it black for me? Like, I'm really concerned about my phone is not giving me, like, I need to know whether I'm actually live. But it's relatively easy to understand. There are many great tools for it. And so we're looking at the Addams Family, which is an Ocean game for the NES. And this is YY-CHR.net, which is a program for viewing the graphics. What if I would look through this? We'd see more graphics. There's some tiles at the bottom there of the family members. Here's a font, and this says The Story of Bubble Bobble 2, Rainbow Islands. So that's left over from a different game. And there's Gomez again. These are the same sprites we saw before. We're going to keep going down a bit. There's Gomez again for a different level. It's being repeated many times. This is a late NES game, so there's a lot of different pages of graphics that it can cycle through. There's Gomez again. And there is a point to me doing this. And there's Gomez again, but he looks very different. And this is why I picked this game, because there is something very unusual happening here, which is that this Gomez on the left is from an earlier version of the game, and he's got a very different look. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to look at tile 34 and tile 34 and 35. So this was a different design for Gomez early on. And it looks like some changes were made, and he has like a wider, cartoonier face. But it does look like some changes were made, so it's not exactly the same sprites. Like it doesn't add up one to one. You can see that there are poses for Gomez which don't match from one side to the other, but a lot of it does match. And am I actually live? Am I actually live? Is this public? Because my phone is not giving this to me for what it's worth. Yeah. So I'm going to see about this Gomez. I'm going to just, where does it actually stop? There's some of the family members are there as well. Those family member sprites I showed before are all here at the very bottom. So that's interesting. But before that is Gomez. And I'm just going to take some of these sprites and paste them in. I guess I won't paste the family in, even though I could. I am live. Okay. I was concerned about it. I'm getting a black screen only on my phone for some reason, and I don't know why, so I've been confused about it. Yeah, this really screwed up my performance. Yeah. You can see and hear what I'm doing. Whew. So this is YY-CHR. And I'm just going to paste some of these images of Gomez. There's a blank tile here too. There's a few blank tiles I'm seeing. And this X is probably blank too. It might be a placeholder. I'm just going to save that. And then we'll load up that ROM and see what happens. Let's see if it's different. But oops, well, yeah, he's not exactly built in the correct way. But his some of his sprites are in the correct positions, and some of them aren't. That's funny. So we've hacked in some different sprites, but we didn't quite pay attention to where they might be located in this grid. So we didn't quite get that as accurately as perhaps we could have. Let me find another instance of Gomez to kind of compare. But comparing these two, as I noticed, there's a bunch of these particular sprites don't actually match. So we do get, to a certain extent, we get Gomez, but I believe the final Gomez is also taller. I mean, not just in terms of design, but it appears that he's 4 tiles tall. And I think the original Gomez might just be 3 tiles tall. So it doesn't quite match in the way that it could. But we could mess around with it and get a more accurate result, I'm sure. For example, and let me just scroll up to the top here. This is just general data. This is not graphic data. You can tell because it just looks like a bunch of pixels. And then we reach this. In an NES game, there are 2 components to the NES game. There is the data, which is the PRG, and then the CHR graphics. And in an NES game, the PRG is first and the CHR is second in like an NES ROM. But these would be on separate chips originally in most NES games. Not all. There's always exceptions, but yeah. So what I could do, I could be a little less silly about this. I'm going to go into YY-CHR. I think I can just paste a template. I don't know if that would help. Some kind of cat girl thing going on. But let's revert our changes. And then I could just maybe I can put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15 down. But I could just put this Gomez head only. Maybe we could just do that, and then yeah, where else would he be? I'm just guessing a little bit. Just put some general Gomez's. This isn't really how you Romhack, but I'm just kind of interested right now. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'll reload it, and that might work a little better. I don't know. It's just a very partial hack that we're doing. Just as an example. And I could spend time figuring this out. But as you can see, we've given him a different face anyway. That's obviously not a finished hack, and we could spend a lot of time figuring out what exactly these sprites are supposed to look like. And there is a website called the Spriters Resource, which is very useful for this sort of thing, where people have posted rips of sprites from various games. Here's a game called Bukowska Wars. And here's like the good king and his armies, and then the enemies. There's the tile set battle, and then the enemy king from Bukowska Wars. And so you could work from a sprite sheet that somebody has done and kind of do your designs here. Maybe this isn't the best example, but you could look at a sprite sheet that someone has done as your as your concept for how things should look. So here is Kid Cool and the quest for the 7 Wonder Herbs, which is a game very much like Decapitac and Psychofox for the Sega systems. And it's a very Super Mario Brothers 1. Like, he's got a 3-frame Super Mario Brothers walk cycle. It's very clear that this character was based on Super Mario Brothers, the original. But these are his player sprites that someone has ripped. Someone called Ryan has ripped for you, including the larger versions that you see sometimes. So if we wanted to redesign Kid Cool, this would sort of be our cheat sheet to figure it out. But then we would go into the actual graphics here in the actual ROM. So an NES ROM's graphics are laid out like this. It's 128 by 128 pixels, 128 by 128 pixels, and they're in these little 8 by 8 blocks like this. So this is sort of the tool I would use in Photoshop to figure out what's happening at any point. So I might I've got a Photoshop action, but you can see that Kid Cool here is 4 tiles high and 2 tiles wide. They've separated by a couple of pixels, but you can see what's going on here, where he's got to fit into this space. And so any graphics we're doing would also fit that. His little friend here is 2 by 2, 8 by 8 tiles right here. And let's look at a game which handles things a little bit differently than that. This is called Attack Animal Gakuen. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Let's play that for a bit, actually, as a demonstration, just real briefly. So this is a clone of Space Harrier by Sega. This has been translated. It's from the Pony Canyon, the music company. And you're some sort of schoolgirl who has different... But she's doing the Space Harrier thing where she's flying around. She can shoot things. And all her enemies are animals in this sort of 3D space. And so she's just flying around this 3D world, and she's got a different outfit every level, as I recall. And there's some kangaroos coming for her, so she's got that going for her. And she's gonna avoid getting hit by things. And now there's some bees, or whatever those are. So let's load up that game. This game is a little bit different. And one thing you might notice is that the graphics for an NES game had to fit in a very small space. The NES can load one of these for characters and one of these for graphics at one time. But this is in a weird pattern. And YY-CHR.net has a few different modes. There's normal. There's forcing it into Famicom 8x8. And then there's 8x16. So there she is. So that's actually the correct mode for this schoolgirl. And this is the ending where she rescues her, I don't know, maybe her other schoolgirl friend. And they hug and kiss. But let me switch these colors a little too to make it okay. So let's select our palette. I think that's still black, but I think this is the flesh, and this would be white. So something like that. You get 4 colors on the NES, and that includes the transparency, or the background, which in this case I've made blue. So we have 3 colors for the schoolgirl, who is maybe one of Pony Canyon's singers, I don't know. But you've got white, black, and flesh here, like another color, which is usually the way I like to do it. Like if you've got 3 colors, a light one, a dark one, and a color, it's a good way to do it, and that is what this game generally is doing. And for the background, which is usually black, but here is blue, like they've got a blue background. So you've got 3 colors plus the background, which is blue in this case. But this is in 16 mode. This is in 8x16 mode. So before it looked like this, which is a little weird. But some games use this specific 8x16 mode, in which it's a thing the NES can do in order to display more and larger sprites on screen. I need to sneeze. So that all the sprites are actually... This is actually 2 tiles are a single sprite instead of just 1. So this is why she's 4 heads tall and 2 wide, but that's actually just 4 sprites. Tiny Toon Adventures does this. Super Mario Bros. 2 does this. A lot of games do this to get more sprites on screen in a certain way, but it's a little bit limiting. And the reason I picked this game is because it's very clear what's going on when you look at the graphics. These animals are all very large. There's a lot of graphics to go through. And it's just very clear. It uses a lot of different pages of graphics. And you can very clearly see what's going on. So this is, I've never hacked this game, but it's a very hackable game. So you could put your own enemies here, like instead of this cool skeleton or this koala with a gun. But yeah, this is just literally in the ROM, pretty much the way you would see them in the game. All these characters are just in the data, pretty much the way you would see them in the final game. And here's some data at the end. So I think that makes it a good ROM to look at for our purposes. Because it's sort of self-explanatory in a way that these games aren't always. But the NES is limited in how many sprites it can draw horizontally. It uses a 6502 processor, which is only so fast. And so these extra tall sprites are sort of designed to get around a sprite limit and do a little more visually. And it's something that some games do. Super Mario Bros. 2 does it. And Tiny Toons does it. So here's Super Mario Bros. 2. While I'm at it. Actually, let's use the other palette. Here are the player characters for Super Mario Bros. 2. And here's the data. Here they are in normal form and in small form. And there's an unused albatross on the right here. So this is actually, you can actually overwrite this bird because this version of that bird is not used. And you could get another frame of animation for these characters. That is something you can do. I need a different palette for this. What would that palette be? Let's figure it out, actually. These enemy palette, it's going to be something like this. So there's your enemies. There's Bird Owl, and as I said, the unused version of the albatross is there from the old version. Doki Doki Panic, Unique Kojo Doki Doki Panic on the Famicom Disk System. Here's a jumping ninja. And various tiles and things for Super Mario Bros. 2. Super Mario Bros. 2 loads specific bits of these pages into memory as it needs them. So it's you can only load one of these for sprites into memory at any time. But its coding means that it's putting them together from bits and pieces as needed. So like this looks like it's repeating 4 times, but this is the different enemy setup for each level, enemies and items. And there's a boss up there. You can see Mauser's there, and Triclide, and Wart. Mamu the villain. And Super Mario Bros. 2 also has a half bank right here, which is always animating. Here are their eyes. Now, not all of these sprites animate or are even used. Look at all these blank ones here. So you could actually do more with Super Mario Bros. 2 than they actually do. But Super Mario Bros. 2, as opposed to the original Doki Doki Panic and so on, is always animating. So there are certain background elements and characters which are always animating and which have 8 different frames, which you can see here. 2, 3, 4. Only 7 of them are actually used in the game, but that's an error and it's possible to patch them out. So some of these items animate. And any of them could animate. Any item here could animate, which includes the potions, the balls, the water, and so on. And that bird. Now you might notice that some of these are background elements and some of these are sprites. Like some of these are characters and items that would be sprites. Whereas really the background should be a different thing. Like here's the background from Attack Animal Gakuen. And then there's some sprites over that. Whereas in these, some of these are background elements. And that's because we are in 8x16 mode, and when we're in 8x16 mode, that really halves the number of sprite designations. So you can actually use both pages at any time. It's an unusual thing. I'm explaining this when I haven't actually gone over what what a normal NES game is, I suppose. So let's do that actually. Let's go back to, do we need normal or 8? I'm trying to figure out. I think we need forced 8. That's probably better. And what's our colors going to look like here? Let's I'm going to just come up with the color scheme real quick here, so they don't actually look right. I'm not getting this right. I'm making the wrong color decision. There we go. So this is Obake no Kyutaro 1-1 Panic. And this game is an NROM game. It's Mapper 0, and I'll explain that in a minute. But this is an early NES game, which was also known in the US as Chubby Cherub. I'm taking a sip of something. So here we are. This is Obake no Kyutaro 1-1 Panic, 1985 from Bandai. So this is a relatively simple game. It was early in the Famicom's lifestyle. You play as this ghost from an anime. You're eating food and you're avoiding dogs. And the entire game's graphics fit onto 2 pages. One for background, which you can see here. And then, what's more like it? One for background that you can see here, and one for sprites. This will include all the characters from the show, which were like a family, I think, and all the items, and everything has to fit in 128 tiles. Or 128 pixels. Let's see. And it's 16 by 16. Wait, that is what. So we need to start talking about 16 here, because this is hexadecimal. Hexadecimal is a base 16 counting, which I'm just gonna I will talk about this later, but hex code. So it counts. There's 16 numbers. It's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, F, and we're usually working with 2 different digits displayed. So it's 0, 0 to FF, which gives us 256. And that's 8-bit. That's what 8-bit means, pretty much. So like this tile at upper left is tile 0, 0. And the tile at the bottom here, which is like a cookie or something, is FF. And so we can count from 0, 1, 2, 3, we count from 0 to F, and then we count from 0 to F. So each of these 8x8 tiles has its own number. So like up here, this is 56, tile 56, kind of in the middle here, 77, 78. So, for example, there's something, this is the FCEUX emulator, which has a tool called the code/data logger. And right now I'm going to turn that on, actually, just real quick. And then I'm going to shut it. I'm going to play a few seconds of the game, and then I'm going to shut it off. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay. So I played a few seconds of the game and shut it off. Now the reason we're talking about 16 by 16, we're talking about hexadecimal assignments, is that the code we're usually working from in Romhacking is also hex code. So this is the memory of what's happening right now, if you can see that. And this is the actual ROM file. And this is lighting up for some reason. D3. Yeah. I'm actually looking for anything. So these dogs that were running around, 58 through 65 is where their graphics are. So I'm actually going to be keeping a lookout from this. But this is actually what we're hacking. This is the code for the video game, but it's displayed as a bunch of 2-digit hexadecimal numbers throughout. This is not the original source code. This is just what the ROM looks like in hexadecimal format. And I just turned on the code/data logger and played a few seconds of the game, mainly so that I could see these little dogs running around, right? Because some of the code is going to light up blue during that time, and some of it's going to light up yellow during that time. And I'm sort of looking through. I think I've found the dogs. I've scrolled down into this ROM, and it's just a bunch of numbers. And it's not really possible to understand what these numbers are doing. But if you play a little bit of the game, it'll light up what it's actually using. And I think I've spotted the dogs, because I was looking for something, numbers in the 50s and 60s, the late 50s and early 60s right here, that were lighting up blue when I did that. And I think I just did. So I am going to, what could I do? 0, 0. Okay, so I'm gonna just type in real quick. Wait. Oh, 1, 2. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm just messing around with this. But 405, 406, 0507. And let's see what happens. Okay, so I've now glitched out that dog. But another of these dogs will sometimes turn into Q-Taro's head, and that's what I was going for. I specifically looked at some of the graphics for Q-Taro's head, which are 00, 01, 02, and 03, those tiles. And I thought I'd found the dogs, and I had. So I just changed one of those tile assignments. And you don't actually need to do that when you're ROM hacking all the time. A lot of times you're just redrawing the character, but sometimes you do want to use a different tile. So I just kind of looked through this and figured it out. But the reason I use this lighting up, I made it light up blue because otherwise these hexadecimal codes are going to be very difficult to parse. It's just a lot of numbers, and it's very context sensitive. It's hard to figure out what's actually going on here, and you're just going through, you're looking for specific numbers. And then you sort of just mess with it in this emulator, FCEUX, and see if it worked. But, you know, a number that's like 52, 53, 58, 59 in this case would mean something very different depending on the context. So context is everything in this ROM hacking. If you're understanding what you're doing. And it's overwhelming at first when you don't understand what you're doing, but there are ways to figure out what the context is and figure out what you're doing. Now there's another tool. If you look in the graphics again, you see that there's a font at the top of the page, including a few Japanese bits of text and like I guess a Q for Qtaro and stuff like that. And here's bits and pieces of the title screen logo. I'll reset it so you can see that. So here's that logo on screen, and then here's how it appears in the game itself. And there's also some text here, Fujiko for Bandai. Now I'm going to open up something called Oriton Table Creator real quick. And I'm going to add table blocks. So this is, again, it's 256. It's a 16 by 16 grid of cells, which is the same as our graphics and the same as everything. It's hexadecimal. And I'm just going to type in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I believe Super Mario Brothers uses this exact same format. C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V. And a lot of games, I think, just put their text up top, kind of like this. Dot. I don't know. I'll add. Where's a space? There's a space there. And some other colors. Then maybe exclamation point, lowercase c, and so on. So let's save that somewhere. Just save that as Qtaro table. So what we've done here is I've looked at how the font is displayed in the ROM's graphics, and I've saved that as a table file, which is a text file. The table file would look like this. So 0 equals 0, dot, dot, dot. It's a list of in the grid which numbers and letters are being used. So if we go back to the hex editor, I can load a table file here. The Qtaro table. And when I load that, this area on the right will now have this table loaded as a way of translating what's going on, basically. And so I can search for text. I'm going to search for the text Bandai. There it is. Fujiko, Shogakukan, TV, Asahi, 1985, Bandai. It's there in the code. I've spotted it using this table. So that means that if I were to type in some other text here, Romhacking demonstration of text. Yeah. Okay. Now we could reset that. I think this is running a little weird. Is it running slow? Animation speed. Okay. Anyway, so the text on the title screen now says Romhacking demonstration of text. And you can do that in your chosen hex editor. If you've got a hex editor, it will usually have this, this window on the right side, which tries to translate any ASCII text from hexadecimal to plain text. But in the case of NES games, a lot of times it's not ASCII text. Sometimes it is. Star Wars and the Cheetah Men, I believe, use ASCII text. But usually an NES game will instead have the graphics laid out in this way. And you can make a table file that matches that so you can see what you're doing. And that's how you change text in a ROM. There's also a graphical element that I'd like to do here. What's probably happening, if we found the text on the title screen, we've also probably found the graphics of the title screen, which would be, I'm looking at what the tile numbers were, like 43, 44, 45 would be there somewhere. So probably just before this somewhere is 43, 44, 45. Let's test that theory. Well, that's odd. It's down from where the text is, but it's probably correct. Let's test it anyway. What if that were 70, 71, 72? Or 10, 71, 72. Would that? Yep. So we've seen that here is where the name table for the title screen is. So we could also change the graphics for the title screen here at this point in the ROM. Now for title screens, I'm showing you an example from something I did. This is the ending to the Bugs Bunny Crazier Castle, a hack I just did. This is a program called NES Screen Tool, which is by Shiru, an NES developer who did Zooming Secretary and other materials. Shiru did. I'm opening up a soda pop right now. But at the right here, you can see these are my tiles. And it looks just like a mess of random tiles, but there's a few tiles from Roger Rabbit, the original, or Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle, the original game. And then there's a bunch of tiles which need to be assembled to make up this image. They are just in a stew because I don't care. I was making it for myself and I don't need it to be understandable in the ROM. I just need it to fit. So I'm using all these tiles, and then they're arranged on the left here. So I can pick a tile, like here's an orange tile. And I could just draw this tile in. You know, I could just draw in my tiles. And then the result is that you get a name table. Oh, this doesn't load because that's hex, that's right. But you get a name table which just basically says which which hexadecimal tiles were being used at which point. And then there's some color information at the bottom, these last few rows. But like this says B8, 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 B8. There's a lot of the tile B8. So let's look for what that tile is. What's B8? B8 is this tile. It's this yellow-orange tile. So there. That's why there's a lot of B8, because there's so much of that in this image. And I also have a few different color palettes that I'm using here, which you can apply a different color palette on the NES every 16 by 16, so every 2 tiles. You can't do it on every single tile, but you can apply a different color palette, like this. So, and I've got 4 different ones I'm using here. I've also been selecting my meta sprites. So here's Lola Bunny for the ending after you saved Lola Bunny. And here's Lola Bunny before you've saved her, which didn't actually get used. And Bugs is also in here. There's a sprite for Bugs. I've just accidentally changed that color, but whatever. So this is a sprite that I've designed in NES Screen Tool. Just figuring out what I'm doing. And so we used that for the ending to the Bugs Bunny Crazy Cow. So if I wanted to change this title screen, what I could do is I could dump the Nametable memory from my emulator and then edit that in NES Screen Tool to figure out what I'm doing. And I've opened up 2 copies of this for some reason. So this sort of means that I could do whatever I want with this particular title screen. What I want to do right now is different. So let's load up the NES American version of this game, which was called Chubby Cherub. I don't have the right color scheme for this, but it'd be something like this. So this is very similar. Let's see how much is changed graphically. They've changed the J. There's a heart now. There's a trademark instead of the Japanese. There's text for Chubby Cherub, like there's a font. And then there's a few tiles that they didn't bother to use, which are still in Japanese or still da-da-da. And the character will have been changed. From Chubby Cherub into something else. I'm not sure about that design, but yeah. So I'm just going to paste that in real quick. Okay, so what happens if I just copy different graphics in? I guess we're going to find out. And there we are. Now that's not really quite right, but it's close enough. So yeah, Q-Taro is now the Chubby Cherub. I'm definitely having performance problems with this emulation, so sorry about that. Because I'm streaming, I guess. I guess that's what happens. But yeah, he's now the chubby cherub from the American version of the game. I literally just copied and pasted the other graphics in. And there we go. Now, if I load this up, I could load this up in another emulator called Mesen. And there is a reason for this. This is sort of a... Escape is the pause button. Okay. Now, as I said before, the title screen is messed up here. It is messed up because it's not Chubby Cherub's title screen. So I'm going to open up well, let's load up a couple things. Mesen is a great emulator. You can create HD versions of the games with more colors or more resolution, which is called the HDPack builder. You just play the game for a while, and then it'll output some PNGs, which you can then edit in order to make the game higher resolution or have more colors. It's very cool. It's a very cool feature. And a lot of people have made very cool HD versions of NES games with it. But I'm also looking at the PPU viewer here. So this is the Nametable viewer. So this is where you can see what your background looks like without the sprites. And then there's also the CHR viewer where you can see what your graphics look like, which graphics are loaded, and so on and so forth. Yeah, this is very slow, very slow. I hope this is streaming properly. I'm not even 100% sure. But this is where you can see your graphics. Let me see with the last known palette. So there's some of your Chubby Cherub palettes. I think that's the correct palette right there. So you can see what your graphics are. And because this is an early NES game, it's an NROM game. It doesn't use a mapper. And mappers allow NES games to do more than the original 1983 Famicom hardware could do. But this is a simpler game. All of its graphics fit onto two sheets, one for the sprites, which is on top, and one for the backgrounds on the bottom. So the best NROM game is Super Mario Brothers. But Donkey Kong is also like this, and a lot of the early games are like this. Challenger. And Super Mario Brothers is the most hacked game of all time. I think Battle City is second on the NES, which is a tank game. But there's also the sprite viewer here. So you can see that we've got a P cursor. I believe that's the P is a cursor. And you can see Chubby Cherub himself. And you can find out what sprites are displaying, what tiles these are, and da-da-da. And there's also the palette viewer. And just like with everything else on the NES, it's hexadecimal colors. So it's a palette which goes from 0 to 7, and then goes on from there. So you can like from 0, 0 to 3F, is that? It's hard to read. But you can select your colors from here. Different emulators will display colors differently. But a color palette is actually one of the easier things to find in a ROM, usually. Because when you look at your color palettes, I don't know how visible this is, sorry. It's clearly 172606 is a color palette. And Chubby Cherub's color palette is probably this, 2630 OF, right? I'm having real performance issues. Yeah, 2630 OF is Chubby Cherub's color palette. Now I could probably find that in the hex. Let me see. 2630 OF. Let's see. It's in there twice. So yeah, let's if I change that to another color, 26 2C3C. Let's go with 2C3C. 2C3C. He's going to change color now. So yeah, finding your palettes is usually pretty easy. Oh, and there. He's blue now. So we've now changed his colors, and all the color palettes are defined here, right around where the title screen is also being drawn in. So that's interesting. But anyway, in Mesen, I'm going to load up the memory tools, and this has the PRG ROM is in there, the memory is in there, the sprite RAM that it's using, the palettes are in here, but what I'm looking for is the name table, and a name table is the background. So right now I want the name table for the currently displayed background, which is the title screen, and I'm going to export that actually as a memory dump. So I'm going to dump this name table right now, and I can open up our hex editor. I'm going to rename it NAM instead of dump. So it's going to be a name table now. In theory, it's going to be a name table. Let's open that up in our hex editor. So this is a name table dump of two different screens, which in this case are mirrored. It's usually mirrored. It's the same screen. And I actually need to cut that down to half. So at 400, I'm going to just delete the second half of this file and save it. So it ends at 3FF. Everything from 400 onward, which is the second half of the file, I have deleted. Now I'm going to open this name table, I guess. Let's do that. And this is the Chubby Cherub name table. I should import some graphics also, which probably be here. So here's the Chubby Cherub graphics. I could also use the palettes. I should probably actually do that. Did I close Mesen? I think I did close Mesen. But anyway, yeah, I need different colors. I want the actual palette here. Maybe I'm being weak, but I could use the actual palette. So let's not exploit the palette RAM and see how that works. Palette RAM. Can I import that? it's not in PAL form. Let me see. Palette ram.dump. Okay. I probably need to cut this in half too. Probably have to cut this down. Actually, that's probably just the wrong format in general, isn't it? Sorry, I think I'm wasting your time. Yeah, that's all wrong. Because it has to repeat the background color. So what we actually need, can I import the music? 2217 2606. I'm just going to type in what it actually is. 22 30 22 25 31 22 30 12 36. So that's the palette that I see in Mesen, the emulator. And let's see if this imports correctly. And there we go. So we can now draw Chubby Cherub. Actually, let's see. Chubby. What do you think, folks? Chubby? Is it chubby? I can take these files. That should work. Oh, I see. It's kind of like this. Chubby. Yeah, I can just sort of work with NES Screen Tool, or also NO or NEXXT. Like this for a bit. Should be. You know, I think they've repeated themselves actually. There's some tiles that they've reused twice. It's confusing because it's wasting space. I don't think it should actually be wasting space. Like I think some of these. Oh no, they're not identical. They're a little different. But yeah, you don't actually need all these tiles. So you could actually, there's definitely some tiles here that aren't necessary or are blank that you could use to make a better title screen for Chubby Cherub, to be honest. Chubby Cherub. Sorry. Okay. Chubby Cherub. And then we'll just so if I save this name table, I'm going to save that name table. And then I'm going to open that up in my other hex editor, I think. Is this the correct one? And we'll just see. We'll just see. Where's about the point where where that would be in the ROM. So it's going to be a bunch of 70, it's a bunch of 71s followed by a 72 in the ROM. So 71, 71, 72. And it's only in the ROM once. Huh. I'm not convinced that that's where it is. TBH. Yeah, I don't think that's actually where it is, because that's not where we were looking before. TBH. I think it was here instead, which is where I was messing around with. 30. I feel like it was in this area. Sorry to be a dork about this. I need to look at what the actual original one was, because I've messed with it now. 30, 40, 41, 42, 43. Something like that. 42. Okay, so it was here. 30, 30, 30. 72, 30. Yes. Okay. 72, 30. 30, 30, 30. 70, 72. Okay, so it's something like here. Okay. And yeah, something like that. 72, something like that. I'm only copying parts of this because it looks like the code for just the words chubby cherub or Abaki no Kyutaro is in a totally different place than the rest of the name table. So I'm just copying in those bits, it looks like, which go from a 72 to a 70. Yeah. I'm actually going to save this. TBH. I'm going to save that because I think I've done this right. And there we go. We now have a blue chubby cherub. We've got a blue chubby cherub, and the title screen now says chubby cherub. And I could also type, because we've got our name table, chubby cherub hack. And I didn't actually fix this part that says trademark or anything. That was a different part of the name table, and I actually just didn't bother. But that was something we could also change. Chubby Cherub Hack TV. So I've now written Chubby Cherub Hack on this title screen. Yeah, so we got that going for us. And then this is what Chubby Cherub actually looks like, the video game. That's funny though. Their title screen is so much worse. Actually, they don't have that nice title screen that we just did. So we've just done something different than the actual Chubby Cherub game does. Isn't that interesting? So the programs used for this are Photoshop or some other art programs such as Aesprite, Tiled, or Clip Studio Paint. We haven't actually used Photoshop very much during this, but it's really where I would be drawing this new artwork for sure. We're also using YY-CHR for graphics replacement, as you can see here. We're using Mesen, which is an NES emulator, which allows for, I need to reload this. Mesen, which is an NES emulator, which also allows for HDPacks. You can create HD versions of these games with more colors or higher resolution graphics in Photoshop. It will export PNGs for you. It'll also do nametable dumping, as we just did. We just dumped the nametable, the background layout of this screen so that we could rework it. You can view sprites, layout, graphics. We're also using FCEUX, which is an... and both of these emulators have debuggers as well, which we haven't even gotten into, but debuggers are complicated and is something we actually should talk about a little. But FCEUX is another NES emulator. It has a Hexadecimal for real-time reprogramming of the game, as we've just seen, with text table support for text. We're also using Shiru's NES Screen Tool for background or sprite graphics layout design. You can also use NEXXT, which is from Ellen Larson Frankengraphics, which is a different version of that. Very similar program, but is like a new version specifically by Frankengraphics. And you can also use NAW, the NES Assets Workshop by Mario Nesrocks, which can do all of these things. I haven't shown you NAW yet, but it can do all of these things. You can do a hex editor. Any will do. You need Notepad. We've also got the Oriton table creator. I don't know if that's still open. And there's also Lunar IPS, which runs IPS patches. So Lunar IPS, I'm going to open up a RomHack patch right now. This is for the Adams family, which we were messing with earlier, actually. I'm just going to patch that real quick, like this. The file was successfully patched. And so Lunar IPS is a program that you use to save your changes to an NES ROM or any other ROM. And you use it also to load other people's changes. Because generally, for copyright reasons, we're not distributing an entire ROM. We're distributing just the changes that have been made. Just stay on the right side of the copyright lawyers. So you need an IPS patcher. We also use CADEditor, which is a level editor for many NES games. Pretty much anything that's not by Nintendo itself. A lot of the major games have level editors in CADEditor. We also use i-CHR, which is a program of some kind. i-CHR is by Kasumi Direct, and I'm loading it right now. Press Control-O to choose a PNG to load. So let's select a PNG to load. I'm going to select this. And this has now been saved as a Nintendo ROM, I think. Let me see. But I've just selected an image. And yes, it is now an NES ROM of that image, which is helpful. That is helpful for a lot of reasons. Yeah, so I'm going to close that. That's i-CHR by Kasumi, which can translate an image or also an animation. It was originally designed for animations. I just use it for more basic stuff, which can translate an image into an NES ROM, which can be very helpful. We're also going to use NintendulatorNRS for running VTO3 and other games with unusual mappers. VTO3 is like an NES game, except it uses 16-bit graphics. And there's also VTO9, VT something else, ... And you only find these for very weird bootleg consoles, but NintendulatorNRS is designed for bootleg consoles. We're also going to use VirtuaNES and NESTopia, which are NES emulators that have compatibility that we need if we're doing Family Basic programs. I haven't talked about Family Basic, but that's yeah, that was an add-on for the Famicom, which allowed you to program games in the basic programming language. And a lot of those games were written down in magazines, and you can still find that information. That still exists. So I was using that for that. We're also going to use ZSNES, which is Super NES Save States. That's a Super NES emulator, which allows us to save state color palettes. And finally, the website Romhacking.net. Now, we haven't actually looked at Super NES. We can look at Super NES. This is Joe and Mac for the Super NES. And YY-CHR has loaded Super NES format, which is 4B PPP. It's a higher. I'm seeing lots of graphics here, but I'm going to kind of scroll down till I see it's game over. Joe and Mac. Okay, here are some of the player graphics for Joe and Mac, and I'm going to load an emulator state here also. Not like that. Not like that. Emulator state. It's probably here. Okay. So I played Joe and Mac a little bit with the Super NES emulator, ZSNES. And I selected a save state, and so now this saved a bunch of palettes, and I'm going to just go through them. This is probably the correct palette right here for this particular, for Joe and Mac. There's like a blue one and a green one. I don't know if another pattern would be better for these. No, that's probably about it. So these are some graphics for Joe and Mac on the Super NES. And I used a save state from the emulator ZSNES to load some palettes, some color palettes. And that, yeah, there's some different palettes here. Which, that's probably the palette for this guy. So we can kind of look through this. There's this T-Rex over there somewhere. Maybe. That's cool. Yeah, there he is. There's this T-Rex. I could probably draw on this T-Rex a little bit. Just do a little bit of coloring. on this T-Rex. So that's Super Nintendo, which is a little more complicated because you're dealing with color palettes and stuff like that. I usually do NES only, but Super NES also has a lot of tools. There is a Mesen S emulator which has a debugger, so it is possible. It can be done. And I'm also going to show a couple things. This is very wrong, but let's see. No, I don't know what's loaded. I don't know if these palettes would be right, but this is Super Mario Kart. I've not bothered to load the correct palettes, but there, that'll have to be good enough maybe. Or are there any that are close from Joe and Mac? Oh, okay. I gotta take